All right. Hello everyone. So this is our recorded na pre-lab discussion on experiment number 3, which is about enzyme kinetics. So I'm hoping that at this point, at the very least na introduce na sa inyo sa lecture yung concept ng enzymes para this will just be a review, no, for you. All right, so we'll have a few theoretical discussion first about enzymes. So enzymes are considered as biological catalysts, meaning they speed up chemical reactions. All right, but because they are biological, that means it's found in the uh in organisms, no, in animals, in plants, all right, and in biology, basically, all right. So it basically speeds up your biochemical reactions, all right, and they are also part of the regulatory mechanisms, no, of the different processes in our body. Okay. So enzymes are ideal in the sense that they can react under mild reaction conditions. Okay, so you don't need extreme conditions to catalyze chemical reactions, unlike your industrial catalysts. All right, most of the enzymes are made up of proteins. That's why we usually discuss enzymes after we discuss proteins. Okay, so they are mostly made up of proteins and they have remarkable catalytic powers. Right? Some of the enzymes, although we will not cover them, are made up of RNAs. No, we call them ribozymes. Okay, but for now, we will deal only with enzymes that are made up of proteins. Okay. Um, so, of course, these enzymes must be water soluble in order for them to catalyze your reaction in aqueous solutions, right? And they are most efficient at a certain temperature and pH conditions. No? So, these enzymes have already adapted to the temperature and pH conditions where they are mainly used. Okay, so if you put them at a different temperature and pH, the function of these enzymes will be destroyed. So how does it speed up a chemical reaction? It lowers the activation energy of a chemical reaction. Later, you will see an energy profile to show how it lowers the activation energy of a chemical reaction. All right, lowering the activation energy of a chemical reaction will lead to an increase in the rate constant, right? Making your chemical reaction speed up, all right? And at the same time, because the activation energy is lowered, the transition state becomes more stabilized. All right, take note that kinetics is very much different from thermodynamics. So even if your chemical reaction speeds up, right, the thermodynamics of the chemical reaction is still unchanged. All right, the value of delta H of the chemical reaction is still the same. All right, it is only the chemical speed or the rate of the chemical reaction that increases. All right, now in order for your enzymes to do its function, it needs to bind its substrates or what we call as the reactants of the chemical reaction. All right, the substrates will bind to the active site. The active site is the site in the enzyme where the chemical reaction happens. All right, so the substrates will bind to the active site. All right, and the binding of the substrate to the active site is described as stereospecific, meaning it is specific towards a certain conformation. All right, it has a high degree of specificity. For example, your proteases, right? Your proteases are uh, more suitable, right, for cleaving amino acids that are in the uh L configuration, no? So your amino acids are commonly found in the L configuration. So your enzymes have already adapted to cleave proteins that are in the L configuration. So it has a high degree of specificity. All right, and because they are enzymes, they are catalysts. These molecules are reusable. All right, so once it finishes one chemical reaction, it can bind another set of substrates to carry out another set of chemical reactions. Right, and as I mentioned, your enzymes are used for regulation or for controlling chemical reactions. All right, so this is what I meant by substrate specificity. All right, so the shape of the cavity of the active site, all right, can accommodate only at least, well, only one molecule, or somehow it can accommodate a group of molecules, all right, because sometimes it accommodates a specific shape. All right, so in order for your substrate, all right, to bind properly to the enzyme, right, it should complement the active site or the binding site geometrically and electronically. When I say geometrically, all right, it should follow the shape, or the substrate should follow the shape of the cavity. And if it's electronic complementarity, right, we are referring to the non-covalent interactions, all right? So for example, your substrate has a negative charge over here. Most likely, the active site should have a positive charge that will attract the negative charge. If it has a nitrogen bonded to a hydrogen, so it's capable of hydrogen bonding, then most likely in the active site, you have another atom that is capable of accepting the hydrogen bond. All right, so that is electronic complementarity. All right, so remember, for a chemical reaction, it requires three things for it to happen. So first, it requires collision, right? The molecules must collide. Second, there must be sufficient energy. So that is called the activation energy. And the third one is it must be in the proper orientation. All right, so enzymes can speed up chemical reaction by, well, first, it can bring your molecules to proper orientation, but the more important mechanism is by lowering the activation energy of the chemical reaction. All right, so you can see in this figure that your substrate binds perfectly to the cavity of the enzyme's active site. So this is how the lowering of activation energy, all right, is illustrated by the energy profile, right? If you have a non or uncatalyzed reaction, all right, so let's say this is the normal energy profile of the chemical reaction. It has a high activation energy, all right? The activation energy is the difference in energy between the reactants and the energy of the transition state. So this is the amount of energy required for the chemical reaction to happen. So it's a large amount of energy. All right? So the chemical reaction will be slow, right? Because it will require a large amount of energy. However, if you catalyze a chemical reaction, the activation energy lowers. All right? You can compare the uncatalyzed versus the catalyzed. There is a lowering of activation energy, and therefore the energy or the activation energy can easily be overcome. All right, and once you have overcome the activation energy, then the chemical reaction will happen. Right, since the activation energy is lower, then there are more chemical reactions that will happen. The chemical reaction will speed up. Okay, that's what happens during catalysis of enzymes. So a reaction that uses an enzyme in our body is the decomposition of hydrogen peroxide. All right, your hydrogen peroxide is an oxidant. All right, and we don't want it because it can oxidize your lipids, your DNA, so it can damage them. So we don't want that. That's why either we use antioxidants, or we use an enzyme called catalase, all right, to decompose the hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. So you can see based on this table, without the catalyst, the activation energy of this reaction is 75.2. Using the catalase enzyme, the name of the enzyme here is catalase. Using this enzyme, the activation energy lowers, all right, from 75.2 to 23.0. That actually translates to an increase in the chemical reaction rate by 6.51 times 10 to the 8th. It's a very, very large increase in the reaction rate because of the lowering of the activation energy. In fact, another catalyst for this chemical reaction, right, which is using a platinum. Platinum is an industrial catalyst, all right? There is still a lowering of activation free energy, but you can see that catalase works better, all right? So biological catalysts are very efficient. All right, there are many factors that can affect enzyme activity, all right? So you have enzyme concentration, substrate concentration, temperature, and pH. In this experiment, we will explore how substrate concentration affects enzyme activity. All right? So the chemical kinetics of enzymes, all right, follows the following mechanism. All right? First, there is a binding step. All right? Your substrate must first bind to the enzyme. Then that once you have a bound conformation, that is when you will have catalysis. All right, so there are two steps. You have binding step followed by a catalytic step. Now, if you will notice this experimental value here, all right, if we plot the substrate concentration versus the initial velocity of the chemical reaction, you will notice that initially, all right, if you increase the amount of substrate present in your solution, the velocity of the chemical reaction increases. All right. However, it will come to a time wherein the velocity starts to level off. All right. So no matter how many or how much substrate you add to your system, all right, it doesn't increase in velocity anymore. All right. So why does that happen? Okay. It happens because, right, let's look at this figure over here. So initially, if you have low substrate concentration, all right, you still have a lot of enzymes that are available, all right, for catalysis. So if you add more substrate, then your enzymes can still accommodate the addition of the substrates. However, at very high substrate concentration, most of your enzyme molecules are already occupied. So even if you add more substrates, because there are no more enzymes to accommodate your substrate, then the chemical reaction will not happen any further. All right? You have reached the maximum amount of chemical reaction that can happen at the same time. That's why the velocity eventually levels off. All right. So the maximum velocity is called Vmax. All right. And we will also define or find a parameter called Km, which is the Michaelis constant. And mathematically, this is the substrate concentration that will require you, or that's required such that you will reach half of the maximum velocity. All right. So that is your Km. So this type of kinetics is known as the Michaelis-Menten kinetics, named after two scientists. All right, so this is Michaelis-Menten kinetics, wherein you first have a binding step. Okay, your substrate must first bind to the enzyme. Now, this binding is reversible. Okay, so once your substrate binds to the enzyme, all right, it has a possibility to unbind. All right. So once you have a bound conformation, there are two possibilities for your enzyme substrate complex. Either the substrate will unbind or catalysis will happen and you will form your products. All right, so this is how we model the Michaelis-Menten kinetics. All right, but we will not be interested with K1, K-1, and K2 in the experiment. Okay, what we will be interested at in this experiment is determining the maximum velocity and the Km, all right, of the enzyme, all right, given a certain condition. Okay, so this plot that you have seen here, all right, is actually modeled by this equation, wherein V naught is the initial velocity, all right, V max is the maximum velocity, Km is the Michaelis-Menten constant, and S here in brackets is the substrate concentration. All right, so you will notice that when S is equal to Km, all right, when the amount of your substrate is equal to Km, you can convert Km to S. S plus S is 2S. So you can cancel out S. It will give you Vmax over 2 or 1/2 Vmax. So what does it tell you? It tells you the earlier definition of Michaelis-Menten constant, which is this is the substrate concentration that will allow you to reach half of the maximum velocity. As you can see, when our substrate concentration is equal to Km, then you have reached half the maximum velocity. All right, that is your Michaelis, that is your Km. All right. Now, in the earlier days, because graphing is not yet, or the applications for graphing is not yet comprehensive, right? Graphing softwares cannot fit data into the Michaelis-Menten equation. So there are different rearrangements of the Michaelis-Menten equation that will allow you to plot a linear plot, all right, and convert or obtain Km and Vmax values. I will not go with the derivation, all right, but I will just show you the equation, all right? So this is the Lineweaver-Burke equation. Okay, basically, the Michaelis-Menten equation was just rearranged mathematically, and you can arrive at this equation, the Lineweaver-Burke equation. So in the Lineweaver-Burke equation, you are plotting 1 over S on the x-axis, as shown here, and 1 over V naught on the y-axis, as shown here. So you will have a slope, and you will have a y-intercept. Y is equal to the slope, which is Km over Vmax, times your x, which is 1 over S, plus your y-intercept, which is 1 over Vmax. Okay, so we will demonstrate this later, right? But you can see that by plotting 1 over S on the x-axis and 1 over V naught on the y-axis, you can now have a way to determine Km and Vmax. All right, once you have the y-intercept, since y-intercept is 1 over Vmax, then Vmax is equal to 1 over the y-intercept. Now for the Km, since slope is equal to Km over Vmax, then Km is equal to slope times Vmax. All right, and remember, we have already obtained Vmax from the y-intercept. So you can obtain Km. All right, we will have an example later on how to use this. Okay, so let's talk about the experiment proper. All right, so in the experiment, we will investigate the activity, all right, of the enzyme pancreatine. All right. All right, so we will look at the enzyme pancreatine, and basically we will monitor how fast the chemical reaction happens at different substrate concentrations. All right, our substrate here is starch. Okay, so the enzyme activity can be assayed in many ways. You can look at the disappearance of substrate or appearance of product. Okay, so for example, you can measure how fast a colored product will appear from an uncolored substrate, production of a UV absorbing product from a non-UV absorbing substrate, or you can also look at the appearance of a radioactive product from a non-radioactive substrate. In this experiment, all right, we will be looking at pancreatine. Right? Sometimes, if pancreatine is not available, we use amylase, right? Amylase that can be obtained from saliva. All right? Both of them has the ability to digest your starch. Okay, so your starch is a polymer of glucose. All right, so your amylase will basically digest or break down your polysaccharide starch into the monosaccharide glucose. Right? That's the activity of your enzyme amylase or pancreatine. Now, once glucose is present in your solution, that glucose will react to a reactant that we will add. Okay, so it's called DNS or 3,5-dinitrosalicylic acid, all right, to form a red-brown color. From yellow, it will become red-brown. So we will now observe how fast this red-brown color is being formed, because that will give us an idea how fast the glucose is being formed. All right? So we will observe the formation of this red-brown color, all right? And we will use an instrument called UV-Vis spectrophotometer, all right, to monitor that, all right? And we will read the absorbances at 540 nanometers because this molecule absorbs maximally at 540 nanometers. All right. So in order for us to carry out this experiment, all right, we first have to generate a standard curve. All right, the standard curve will allow us to determine the amount of glucose present in our solution at any given point in time. Okay, so you will prepare 8 solutions in total, all right, in large test tubes, and you will mix the following. In blank, 0 ml of 1 milligram per ml glucose solution, 5 ml of distilled water, and 1 ml of DNS. All right? And then in test tube 1, you will follow this, and so on and so forth. The total volume is always 6 ml. All right? Total volume is always 6 ml. Then we will read the absorbance of your standard solutions at 540 nanometers so that you can generate a standard curve. All right? So your standard curve will allow you to correlate your absorbance and your glucose. So the equation of the line can be interpreted as absorbance is equal to, here the slope is 1.0357. Again, this is just an example, times the concentration of your glucose. So you will use this for the part 2 of the experiment. Okay? So in the part 2 of the experiment, you will be determining absorbances, and from absorbances, you can determine the concentration of glucose. Okay, so this is the generation of the standard curve. Once you have generated your standard curve, you will now go to the enzyme assay proper. All right, for the enzyme assay, you will prepare, again, a set of solutions. This time, you have 7 solutions, and you will mix the following. All right, the total volume must be 10 ml for all. All right, you are varying the amount of starch, which is our substrate. The pancreatine solution will remain constant. The phosphate buffer solution will remain constant. We will just adjust the distilled water volume to get a total volume of 10 ml. Alright? So this phosphate buffer is the buffer that you prepared from experiment 1. Okay? So you will mix all of these, alright? And you have to make sure that your test tubes are covered with aluminum foil. Okay? And then once you have prepared them, you will allow them to react, alright? Hydrolysis for 15 minutes. Alright? But you will only start the timer once the temperature is at 37 degrees Celsius. Okay? Because your enzyme pancreatin is optimal at 37 degrees Celsius. We will use a temperature controlled water bath. Okay, so we will control the temperature at 37 degrees Celsius. You start the time, okay, measure 15 minutes, and then you stop the time. All right, so after measuring 15 minutes, what you will do, all right, is to quickly add, all right, 1 ml of DNS. All right, so this must be immediately done. All right, in order to stop the reaction after 15 minutes. Then after that, okay, you can measure the absorbances. All right. Once you have measured the absorbances, you can determine the glucose concentration that was formed. Okay. And then you can determine velocity. How can you determine the velocity? The initial glucose concentration is 0. All right, because initially you don't have glucose yet. And the final glucose concentration can be determined from this equation. All right, because that is the amount of glucose present after the chemical reaction. So once you have determined the final and the initial glucose, then you can determine the velocity, right, by subtracting the final glucose concentration to the initial glucose concentration, final glucose minus initial glucose, which is just 0, over time. The time of reaction is 15 minutes. So let's convert it to seconds. So that's 15 times 60 or 3,000 seconds. Right? Oh, sorry. 15 times 60. No, 9,000. Tama? Yeah, 9,000 seconds. 0, 3. Yeah. Or, no. 15 times 60, 30. 900 lang pala. 900 seconds. Alright, so you can get the velocity in molar per second. Okay, then you will plot, well, you can plot a Michaelis-Menten, wherein you will plot velocity versus the substrate concentration. All right, again, the substrate concentration may be calculated, all right, by looking at these values. But take note, they are diluted. All right, the total volume is 10 ml. So you have to recalculate for the new concentration of your substrate after mixing all of them together. Okay? Yeah. So velocity versus substrate. All right. So once you have that, you can plot the Lineweaver-Burke. All right. So all of your velocities will be reciprocal. And also with the substrate concentration, you will get the reciprocal of substrate concentration. Then you will plot. Okay, so as an example, let us say that in your calculations, you have obtained the following substrate concentration and the following initial velocities. All right, so how do we determine the Km and the Vmax? So for this, you will need an Excel. All right, you will need to plot this in Excel. So let me show you how you can do it in a spreadsheet. You can actually use Google Sheets as well. All right, if you don't have Excel, or in Mac, I think there's also a version of Excel in Mac. All right, so let's open the Excel. All right. Okay, so let's have substrate concentration over here and then initial velocity over here. So for our substrate concentration, we have 1, 2, 5, and 20. 1, 2, 5, 10, and 20. Tama ba? All right. And then for velocity, you have 2.5, 4, 6.25, 7.69, and 8.7. All right, a quick plot of this. So you highlight them, insert, and then you make a scatter plot. All right, a quick plot of this will show you that you have a Michaelis-Menten plot. All right, the behavior is like a Michaelis-Menten plot. Right, so this data is good. All right, but you cannot determine VM and Kmax, all right, using, sorry, Vmax and Km rather, Vmax and Km by simply plotting this. What you need is a Lineweaver-Burk plot. So what we will do is we will reciprocate the 1 over S and then, the S and then the V naught. So equals 1 over the substrate concentration. And then I'll just drag this down, equals 1 over the velocity concentration. And then I'll just drag this down. And then you plot. Insert, scatter plot, then add trend line. So right click on the data points, add trend line. Then there will be an option, display equation and chart, and display R-squared value. Of course, this is an idealized example, so we have a perfect line. Okay. So what you can see here, right, there you go, is the equation of the line. Right? You have y equals 0.3x plus 0.1. So going back to my Lineweaver-Burk plot, right? So you'll have y equals 0.3x plus 0.1. Remember in the Lineweaver-Burk, so y is 1 over v naught. The slope is km over vmax. The x is 1 over s. The y-intercept is 1 over vmax. Since our y-intercept is 0.1, 0.1 is 1 over vmax, then vmax is equal to 1 over 0.1, which is equal to 10. All right? So the Vmax in this case is 10 millimolar per second. The unit is millimolar per second because the velocity here that was used was in millimolar per second. So that's the maximum velocity. All right? For the Km, all right, it is equal to slope times your Vmax. The slope is 0.3. The Vmax is 10. Therefore, Km is equal to 3 millimolar. So that means at around 3 millimolar, we have reached half the maximum velocity. The maximum velocity is 10. 1/2 of this is 5 millimolar per second. So you will see that the 5 millimolar per second is between here, which is between 2 and 5. So it makes sense that our Km is 3 millimolar. Okay? And that is one of the objectives of this experiment, okay, to determine the Km and the Vmax of the enzyme pancreatine or amylase. Right? If, well, in that case, if we will be using saliva. But if not, then we will be using pancreatine. All right? And that ends the pre-lab discussion on enzyme kinetics.